By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
you know, because you have some people right now. We're having a little issue, and I know if you know Professor James Small,
Dr. Jeffries, and Professor Smalls were in the Black Studies departments of City College when I was an undergraduate, and I upset that department like nobody's business. So I know them extremely well, and they later came to tell everyone in the slave theater, because I was on a lecture series with them, how I upset them, and I had a very strong reputation of, you know, upsetting those classes at City College with questions. And some Dr. Smalls, many times they would let me teach the class because they couldn't answer my questions, because I mean, you know, that's how powerful I was, even in terms of coming into those circles with this knowledge that I got at the Shabbat Yisrael was my real university.
Okay. Under Cohen Levy.
Under Cohen Levy. So when I went back to university after in my senior year, no one recognized me. They wanted to know, where did I go?
What did this transformation?
So my teachers, all them professors, wanted to know, where have you been? Because I came in with a turban on, a katonet on every day, and they knew that if that guy with that turban come in your class, you better work. It's gonna be. And it was just, again, asking them questions. They couldn't answer them.
Right. Yeah. The reason why I asked that, because Professor Smalls right now, there's a video that I have with a brother by the name of, they call him Zion Lex, but his name is Abdel Levy. I don't know if you followed some of the videos that I've done. But there's an instance where Professor Smalls says, this has happened maybe like 2 years ago, but he's comparing our way of life to a piece of Zohar. What do you think about that? Like Professor Smalls making such a statement, or them even claiming that we got everything from Egypt, and everything that we've gotten was from the Egyptian priesthood or anything of that nature?
Well, I'm fully aware of the teachings, so that, just let me make that statement. I won't speak personally, because I believe that that's not good for us to speak personally about him, but I'll just speak to the issue. The most important thing that we have to understand is that we are not Egyptians. That's number one. We have to also be aware of, as we have said repeatedly, black people, former slaves, are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. The knowledge that they have been unable to acquire, it's evident with not knowing our language, not knowing our God, our spirituality, not knowing our history, not knowing the origin of us as a people. So when one finds that, and there's extreme evidence, overwhelming evidence to show that we, like the Ashantis, the Igbo of Nigeria, are part of a Hebraic lineage, and those through Emperor Haile Selassie, Menelik, it still points to that. So our brothers in the West Indies, or what we call the Maroon movement, which Garvey came out of, all of that, there's just overwhelming evidence all across the earth to point those who came on the slave ships from West Africa. There's Joseph Williams' book called Hebrewism in West Africa.
You know, because you have some people right now. We're having a little issue, and I know if you know Professor James Small,
Dr. Jeffries, and Professor Smalls were in the Black Studies departments of City College when I was an undergraduate, and I upset that department like nobody's business. So I know them extremely well, and they later came to tell everyone in the slave theater, because I was on a lecture series with them, how I upset them, and I had a very strong reputation of, you know, upsetting those classes at City College with questions. And some Dr. Smalls, many times they would let me teach the class because they couldn't answer my questions, because I mean, you know, that's how powerful I was, even in terms of coming into those circles with this knowledge that I got at the Shabbat Yisrael was my real university.
Okay. Under Cohen Levi.
Under Cohen Levi. So when I went back to university after in my senior year, no one recognized me. They wanted to know, where did I go?
Where did this transformation?
So my teachers, all them professors, wanted to know, where have you been? Because I came in with a turban on, a katonet on every day, and they knew that if that guy with that turban come in your class, you better work. It's gonna be. And it was just, again, asking them questions. They couldn't answer them.
Right. Yeah. The reason why I asked that, because Professor Smalls right now, there's a video that I have with a brother by the name of, they call him Zion Lex, but his name is Abdel Levi. I don't know if you followed some of the videos that I've done. But there's an instance where Professor Small says, this has happened maybe like 2 years ago, but he's comparing our way of life to a piece of Zohar. What do you think about that? Like Professor Smalls making such a statement, or them even claiming that we got everything from Egypt, or everything that we've gotten was from the Egyptian priesthood, or anything of that nature?
Well, I'm fully aware of the teachings, so that, just let me make that statement. I won't speak personally, because I believe that that's not good for us to speak personally about him, but I'll just speak to the issue. The most important thing that we have to understand is that we are not Egyptians. That's number one. We have to also be aware of, as we have said repeatedly, black people, former slaves, are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. The knowledge that they have been unable to acquire, it's evident with not knowing our language, not knowing our God, our spirituality, not knowing our history, not knowing the origin of us as a people. So when one finds that, and there's extreme evidence, overwhelming evidence to show that we, like the Ashantis, the Igbo of Nigeria, are part of a Hebraic lineage, and those through Emperor Haile Selassie, Menelik, it still points to that. So our brothers in the West Indies, or what we call the Maroon movement, which Garvey came out of, all of that, there's just overwhelming evidence all across the earth to point those who came on the slave ships from West Africa. There's Joseph Williams' book called Hebrewism in West Africa, which points to, if you go into West Africa, the people of the Ivory Coast, Guinea, Senegal, Nigeria, Togo, Benin, I've been to these places, they all have Hebraic roots. The slave ships left. I've been in the dungeon in the Cape Coast in Ghana, and in the dungeons where the slaves came from. So it's evident that those who came here are from that same stock. When those that are in those parts of Africa who are not of Hamitic, or again the other seeds, we have Shemitic stock, the Japhetic seed we know of. We know of the Ishmaelites that are in these lands who are not a part of the mixture through the invasion of the Greeks and what have you.
Right.
So we see when we travel, black Ishmaelites. I was just with the Bedouins just a few days ago.
Right.
So again, when you have that type of travel and make those links linguistically as well, you know, Arabic and the connection with Hebrew. And if we're not, as I tell them, Hebrews, then who are we? Because they still, those who claim that we're Kemet or whatever, is something else. When you look at the principles of Mahat or those rules that they have, you can see that there's a difference. I have them, I've compared them with the Torah. They're not the same. Again, there's a universal knowledge that covers all African nations.
Right.
So it's not that someone started it. There were principles before any written documentation of right and wrong.
Right.
People knew across Africa that thieves and stealing was wrong.
Right.
Adultery was something that'll get you put to death.
Right.
It's not in the Egyptian inheritance, not an Israelite inheritance alone, but it's universal knowledge. So again, when you look at anthropology and how nations develop and how information spreads, you see how languages also take their change over time. They're all connected.
Right.
So again, a broader mind, deeper understanding of different nations, and the fact that the Sudanese represent Egypt today. Egypt is known as the United Arab Republic. I've been to Egypt, to Cairo, and you know, you've spoken with the people that are there, the people we know as the Nubians, you understand? Directly visit their homes. It just opens up an entirely different door, you know, and you know who went on the slave ships. Are there records that they have in this country, and you begin to go into the south and go to the Gullah Islands, and you understand it's just too much information.
Right.
So
that
connects us to being who we are.
Right.
So I understand that there are different levels of knowledge amongst our people. I don't put anyone down. I acknowledge them for where they are.
Right.
But with more research and more growth, I believe in turning over every leaf. So that's why I know about chemic studies, and I know and I enjoy speaking with Dr. Smalls even today.
Right.
Any of them, Dr. Jeffries.
Right.
They're more open now because I've heard them admit, you know, to certain things. They've had to turn to the Hebrews. I remember when Dr. Jeffries was attacked because of his statements against the Jews.
Right.
He had to look to us to be able to know how to address that community. And so again, that's my position on it.
All right.
And again, I could speak more on it, but again, I know who I am, and there are people among our people who they have not arrived at the truth about who they are. And there are many snares and traps out there. They write books and they throw information out because their objective is that we never find out the truth.
Right.
And they will interview people who they know are confused about about this subject before they interview people who are knowledgeable, that can speak Hebrew fluently and that can defend this truth and, you know, show the differences between the various other areas where they sometimes stand opposing what we're saying, whether it's Judaism, you know, Islam, or what have you. And we just try to embrace the whole. That's my position of understanding the whole picture and being able to know what they know so that you can have an intelligent conversation.
Did you ever get to meet the late Albert Bivens?
Yes, I did.
So how was that?
Again, great opportunity to know him. He died through Cohen Levy.
Oh, Cohen Levy.
Cohen Levy took me to all these men, wanted me to meet them, and wanted me to see their teachings. That's
an experience.
Wonderful. But what's been greater is that to this day, I know his oldest surviving student. He's over 90 years of age. His name is Elder Ari. Lives in Amityville. I visit him all the time, so we have dialogue constantly, and we even compare Hebrew teachings. So again, there's some knowledge that I still exchange with him, and I get from the teachings of the school, which later became, I think, what is known as the Tanakh school, and those brothers up. So no, I know the original teachings and those.
Because and it's great that we could speak about this, because there's a lot of the schools that branched off of Abba Bivens. I think sometimes they misconstrue what the man was about. And from all the elders like Nasi Barak, yourself, Chief of Chiefs, all of you guys have met him, and I get a different story. Tanakh school. He used to read the Hebrew out of the scroll.
Absolutely.
He used to, because I believe he studied under Rabbi Matthew.
Yes, again, if he did not, I can't say whether that was actually, but the same school of teachings.
The same school.
You understand? They were founded in Torah and reading the scrolls and all of that. And again, did he
incorporate the New Testament, or did he just,
Well, again, I never heard him speak about the New Testament. You understand? That wasn't what I heard when I was in his presence. It was Torah.
And the 12 charts, did you see that he have that implemented? These brothers have the 12 tribe charts. Jamaican is Benjamin.
He knew and understood the 12 tribes as all the other teachers had of that day. Based on the Tanakh, there are territories that, when you speak about the 12 tribes, it's not all Cubans, all Panamanians, but Israel is in all of those places. So there's some truth in that, but being able to precisely understand it and explain it and articulate it is what makes these differences. Again, so that's just a fine line. I don't let that disturb me in any way. I know what is the facts of who we are, because we have been mixed into Puerto Ricans, all Central America. So again, I understand what they're saying.
Because Nasi Barak, when I was speaking with Nasi Barak, and he was telling me when he was up there, because Nasi Barak was up there for a few years with Abba Bivens, and he was saying about the Hebrew that they speak now. Everything is Shalom, and so he told me that Abba Bivens told him that he was sitting at his table one day studying, at his kitchen table studying, and that a man appeared to him in a gray suit, I believe he said, and told him that no, the way that he was doing Hebrew is wrong, that this is the way that he should do Hebrew, and everything is just Shalom, the way that these brothers speak it. Your Hebrew teacher is, and not talking down, but your knowledge of Hebrew, is that correct? Or the way that we speak the Hebrew, is that the correct way? Because people, you said that men had visions with certain things, and they put certain things on you because of those, and those things came through. What would you say about what you've known in your Hebrew studies in comparison to what our brothers do in terms of the way that they speak the Hebrew?
I've had many discussions. Even very recently, I did an interview. It's on YouTube now, under my name, Cohen Mikhail Levi, and it was basically questions concerning just what you've asked me. This is the manner I would respond. In the Hebrew language, when you read the ancient Hebrew, there are no niquidot, or the vowels as we would call them. So that there's still, even with the consonants, there's still a pattern of unwritten niquidotes. Because you have to have a distinction between the persons or the subjects in the language, whether it's past, present, or future tense. Then as you go to the nif'al and the pl and the pu'al and the hif'il and the huf'al and the hitpa'el, those sounds of those particular binyanim also are distinguished in the past, present, and future tense of those. without a shade or different shades of vowels, you would not be able to know whether or not you're in a particular binyan or you've been in the past, present, or future tense.
Right.
So again, it just doesn't hold true. When you learn the Hebrew language and you begin to speak and you begin to use the language and realize that there are ways within the language, even without the niquidot, that makes these distinctions, the sound patterns. Also, there's a natural, what we call vowel that human beings have, in particular Hebrews. The Europeans taught us A, E, I, O, U. And they say those were the vowels when you go to study. But in our natural tongue, A, E, I, O, U, that's something you just can't get around. A baby makes those sounds when they come in. It's not going to be all the time. So therefore, it's just understanding. So when you go into Aramaic, which is where Ivrit comes from, you have Shemayamai, and you understand, and you have different words that have, again, ends with a ta, but it's not going to be again. Right. So again, you got to go back to linguistics. Right. And so it just doesn't hold true and being able to do that. And if they were to have conversations with one another, because just to say a word or speak, then you have to look and see, well, where the communities where dialogue has grown, you understand? Right. And what have you. And then time will show whether or not they're able to establish dialogue. If I say to them, okay, say that someone is behind you about to attack you, you understand? You have to be able to communicate, and to communicate effectively. Just studying a language is not being able to communicate in it. You have to be able to distinguish whether you're speaking in the present tense, the past tense, the future tense. In Hebrew, you have a word like the word, let's say, rats. You understand? But now you're running. But if someone is chasing you, you're also running, but you got to be able to distinction. So that's when you got to have sound patterns to be able to distinguish those particular tenses and what have you, and whether you are in a active verb form or passive. So they need to question and investigate in their studies whether or not all of that holds true. And that's how I would say it, that again, as we have dialogue, I've had dialogue with those that do. I share my point of view. I always listen for theirs, and I investigate. It just doesn't hold true as I go in and have gone in my studies and communicating with Israelites. For instance, you can go to Ethiopia, they speak Geese. You understand? And when you speak in their languages, they have sometimes the same phonetic pronunciations of words that we have in the Hebrew language. Okay. And amongst the other languages too. No Igbo has No Xhosa has Right. They have different sounds, so you got to go and just you got to be able to differentiate.
Great. This is my last question on Rabbi Matthew. You say you're in contact with one of his oldest students. He's 90 years old now.
Not Rabbi Matthews, Rabbi Bibbins. Rabbi Bibbins. And Rabbi Bibbins, I want to let you know this.
He was a rabbi.
Yes, that's what I knew him as, Rabbi Bibbins. And that's why I said when I went, that's what he was teaching. Right. Nasi Barak would have known him much better than I.
Yes, he gave me a lot of. Well, in speaking to his oldest student, did he, in your conversations with him, did it ever come to your knowledge that he worshiped Jesus, or was it because the only reason why I'm asking this because these brothers they're what they call messianic brothers, we're considered non-messianic. Did in any of that, was there any did he ever tell you that this is the way that they went going into the New Testament? Was there any?
Simple, easy answer. Absolutely not. Torah founded to this day. You understand? Hebrew. No Greek writings is any part of our relationship or discussions, never. Also, he would always say this to me. We could talk in Hebrew, and he would say he taught Hebrew, but he don't know Hebrew. You understand? Because when it comes to grammar and stuff like that, Dick Duke, he was not versed in that. Like where Elder Reed, his oldest surviving students. So that's why I said, but he can talk it. But as I said, he's not going to be able to make those distinguish and go past present and future tense in that but he has a profound knowledge of roots of words.
Understood. So we how big is your community in I don't know, in terms of maybe not numbers, but how big is your community in Guyana? Oh, what is the name of the congregation in Guyana before?
A great question. Yeah. When I arrived at Guyana, we were known as Shabbat Yisrael.
The Guyana extension.
Yes. Most people could not say Shabbat Yisrael.
Yeah, the H.
So again, that was very difficult.
Yeah.
They'd also ask, where are you from?
Yeah.
And I would have to say our headquarters in Brooklyn.
Right.
They wanted to go to Brooklyn.
They wanted to go to Brooklyn.
So that's where they would want it. Yeah. As I grew over the years, I went from understanding of congregationalism to nationalism. You perhaps heard me say that using the Chinese, they don't come to America and say that they're anything other than Chinatown. When they go to San Francisco, they're Chinatown. In Guyana, they're Guyanese. You understand? So that we always say now, and everywhere I go, I teach, we're Hebrew Israelites of Guyana, Hebrew Israelites of Charlotte, Hebrew Israelites of Philadelphia, Hebrew Israelites of Barbados, Hebrew Israelites of Trinidad, Hebrew Israelites of Jamaica. And that's becoming what I call national maturity. Because now the people know that we are being identified as what I would call the diaspora nation. Because the diaspora is a nation. You understand? Everybody that went were a part of a nation. We're the Hebrew Israelites. Whether we're in Tanzania, wherever colonialism went, that experience marks the Hebrew people. That's the fulfillment of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and all of our experiences. So again, in Guyana, there was an elder. She passed away. Her name was Elder Naomi. She knew...
One of the originals that came.
No, she's one of the original Guyanese. The community in Guyana now is basically hundreds and hundreds of people that are Guyanese. See, because basically what I've done is awaken an entire country. You know, when you're in a country for 40 years, you lose your zits and the bus and everything. So our mark is everywhere. So if you get at the airport and just say my name or ask for the Hebrews, they'll bring you right to our community. Because we're known all throughout the country, and it's now has gone to other countries, because it's now in Barbados and Trinidad. When we have our 30th anniversary, 40th anniversary, which were great celebrations, people came from Israel all across the United States, from the Caribbean. So the country, it's all advertised on television and radio. They begin to see the picture of what this is. That's what awakens them. I'll give you another example. When I began to make the contact with the land of Israel and go on television and radio and tell them that our headquarters is in Israel, now they begin to connect it with the Bible, not Brooklyn. They want to go to Israel now because they understand the nationalistic picture rather than a congregational picture is where I started as an Israelite. I'm a nationalist now. I'm teaching nationalism and who we are, ethnicity. So again, when I was in Guyana, in Israel just a few days ago, we had what we call various theaters of what we call the State of the Union, the State of the Nation Conference, where every representative from different regions just a few days ago had to give a report updated. This is done every year. So I can tell them how we've progressed, where we are at this point in Guyana, Trinidad, and what have you, because that's my portfolio on that national level. Ghana's represented, Kenya was represented. London was represented. You understand, all of these various countries. So there was a sister there from England. She had been in England for 30 years. She represents an ecumenical churches all throughout London. She came there as a Christian representing all the Christian churches across London. She was one of the speakers that spoke for about 15 minutes. And her words, but there's another brother named Yehoshaphat. He represents the London jurisdiction with another brother known as Cohen. And so at that point, they allowed her to say something, and she immediately said, I need to find the brother and speak from him. Is he here? The brother from Guyana, because I left Guyana 30 years ago. And she told everyone that when she goes back to London, she's going to have a problem, because she's going back there not a Christian, but she has found out and knows that she's a Hebrew Israelite. Wow. And now that this person who has got up and spoke, because I spoke before them, and she now knows that these teachings have been in her country for 40 years, so we may exchange information, and she's no longer Christian. She's a minister, a Christian minister, who's on the board of all these churches of London, and she's going back there Hebrew Israelite, so she knows that her job is finished.
That's right.
She's kicked out, and she doesn't care, just to show you the profoundness of this. So again, in your original question, in terms of being there in Guyana, no, I'm working and have been teaching for 40 years, ministers of government, president himself. I have a meeting with him in a few days. I mean, this has gone to an entirely different level. Because when you hear truth over and over again, and I had president that have called in, because he called in and asked this question. One of the late presidents, as I said, of Guyana, yes. He called in and he asked this question. He said, this man has been coming on this television and radio for years, and he's been saying to the people of Guyana, you're Hebrews, and that Christianity is a deceptive religion. It's the religion of colonialism, because the slaves were Christianized in all of the territories. Right. And he said, why has no one ever come on and challenged him? We have all of these missionaries here. We've having even people of Guyanese ethnicity who have heard him. Why have not any of them come on to refute what he's saying? And the Guyanese people call in and they say they don't want to come on the station with him because they know that they'll be embarrassed, and they cannot, refute this information, because it's based on old, new. And they ask me sometimes, have you read the New Testament? And I tell them I read from Matthews to Revelation, then I read from Revelation back to Matthew, so I read it frontwards and backwards. Ask me anything you want. And so they know. They know you can't challenge this. Truth.
And we know in the community that you are a great representative of the entire community, and
absolutely.
It's a blessing.
I want to just say this. I'm your product. I'm the product of every Israelite community Hallelujah. In New York City.
Hallelujah. And your relationship, I'm going to shift the subject. You spoke about Israel. Your relationship with the late Ben Ami, Adon Ben Ami. How was that like? How did that come about? And also, if you will care to answer, you know, for years, people like you and Maureen Michal have gotten criticism for the relationship, you know. Do you care to speak about that? How?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important that people understand it. From the days of Jeroboam and Rehoboam, our nation split into what has been known as the northern and the southern kingdom. We've been divided in that manner from those times, perhaps 800 BCE until the present. And the prophecies of Ezekiel 37 says that the time would come when these two sticks metaphorically would be joined together and that Israel would be one nation again. I knew and understood from the words of Cohen Levi that I was from the tribe of Levi. Levi comes from the word lao, which were the hooks. If you look it up, it means hooks. It was the hooks that joined the curtains of the tabernacle called the Ohel Moed. So it's even when I was in the streets, brought up and had friends who were friends when they were 7 and 8 until they became 13 and gang members. We were one family of friends. And ignorance caused us to be killers of each other. And I always played the role of wanting them to be brothers. I never wanted to see our people be enemies to one another. I understood that we were not the enemy.
Right.
We are not the enemy today. And we act like the enemy, but we're not. We have to understand that. Our challenge as a people is not only to find the Creator and obey His laws, but we'll never fulfill that until we learn that part of those laws is to form the relationship of neighborliness and brotherhood one with another, of sisterhood one with another, of familyhood, because it's family that make up a nation. All of the Chinese people are of different families. All of the people of Panama, of any country, it starts with family. So that the unification of family is supposed to be innate. It's not even supposed to be taught. It's supposed to be automatically understood, because that's the only way you can come into the earth is through a family,
Right.
not through a religion.
Right.
So that when one has that understanding, which is why we are destroyed, because we don't understand family. That's one of the things that I have to teach. And you can't teach just by words, articulation. It has to be done with example.
Right.
Cohen Levi always taught about unification. Even when I visit the various communities as a young man, as an Israelite, even though we were divided, we still prayed for each other wherever they was. We said, bless all Israel. In the Caribbean, every time I come to you all are still doing that today.
Right.
It cannot just be a prayer. It has to be a mindset. It has to be a love of self. And it has to be genuine. That's the only way we'll ever get. You also have to know that, as Cohen taught me, that's where the Torah comes in, that every family has misunderstandings. All of the other people, even the Jews in the land of Israel, even the Ishmaelites, they are Shiites and Sunnis and all of that, but they all understand family.
Right.
It doesn't mean that because you have differences or different views that it should divide you. That's why we are in the condition that we are, because we don't realize that differences are part of being 12 different families. In actuality, 13 different families. They were never exactly the same.
Right.
We had words, Sheba-late and Sheba-late, because their lives. So there was differences. So you just got to broaden your mind and understand that when you have misunderstandings, it's the Torah that Yah gave us to help you overcome. in a righteous way these differences and the misunderstanding. That has to be applied. So I understand that. I was taught that by Cohen Levy. He even told me, he said, some things that I'm teaching you, Cohen, he said, I can't even do it because I've been affected by the racism of America. But you can do it. Don't follow me. You do what I taught you to do. And that's what I do. So he taught me to unify Israel. That's the tribe of Levi. We don't get land. Yah is my possession. The other tribes, you get the land. We were put into everyone's land to keep the cohesiveness of the family by making sure that they applied and learned the principles of the Torah, of the law. That's my role. So again, if I didn't understand that, my mother was a Christian. I brought her into law. I go to countries, a Rastafarian, I bring them into law. I speak with Christians that are in these countries, Guyana and elsewhere. I bring them to law. Because if I looked at them where they are, I'll never get them, nor can I bring them to truth if I don't respect them where they are. You understand? If I didn't respect my parents, that's why I have so many people in this way of life, because even when I came in, I love them. Love covers all transgressions. So if you love a person, you try to reach them. The brothers and sisters, they have great courage. You can't change someone who's different from the outside. You only do that by engaging and having conversations. If you are confident in what you're about and you're right, Yahweh upholds the words of his servant. He confirms the words of his servant. So I know that I represent the Holy One of Israel. I'm doing what my words are not my own. I'm just a reiterator of the words of Yah. So therefore, I win every battle because he upholds what I'm saying. And so when you think that someone who might be doing something against Torah is going to change me, no. I know that over time, I'm going to change them. Because that's what it is. You have to have the patience and have the respect and have the endurance to engage. The longer you talk with me, the longer I know that sooner or later you're going to get it. And I'm a teacher. I have students that when I teach them division from one way, they don't get it. You have to have different angles of being able to bring the same point, but from different angles. Depends on who you're speaking to. And if you know where they're at and you know their mindset, it's easier for you to explain it. We have a tendency of when we listen to respond rather than to understand. I listen to understand what you're saying, and then I respond. But my first listening is not to have my lip ready to say something and respond. No, that's not how I listen. That's art. Listening is a skill, and it's an art. So you got to develop that before you can reach people.
So what you would say is, don't try to be combative, but be receptive.
No, because my objective, my goal is for us to agree. So my conversation is for that. And where you say something, I acknowledge, I agree with that. We don't give credit where credit is due. In the Caribbean, they say give Jack his jacket. You know what I mean? So that's what I do. Wherever I agree with a point, I let you know. On that, I agree. So you understand? And then we get down to where, and then I explain my points. And I want you to know this. I just came from Israel. The accomplishment there has been that the priesthood of Cohen Levy has been now and is now being united with the priesthood in Israel. And that we're doing just what we're supposed to be doing, agreeing on the Torah. We have a dialogue that's to take place, to start from Genesis 1:1 to Deuteronomy, and to agree on the word, not to come to challenge. What does this say? And again, it took years to achieve what has just been achieved in my just a few days ago from the highest of leadership. Wow. Again, Cohen Levy and those souls, Abba Ben-Ami, and that was Abba Ben-Ami's vision. Right. So again, people don't even realize that, hey, Abba Ben-Ami represented the #1 student or the top student of a man called Elder Bowie, who I told you earlier, known as Elder Eliyahu. and they identified me as being Cohen Levy's top student,
without a doubt.
and the two of us joined these sticks together. He's made transition, but everyone knows that he placed me in that priesthood. I'm the only person that has never been taught by the kingdom, never been, again, taught by BINAH, taught by Cohen Levy, and now that unification is taking place because he understood that he wanted initially Cohen Levy, before BINAH went to Israel, he visited Cohen Levy and asked him to set up the priesthood. That's history people don't know. So it just happened just 20-something years later through myself. So I'm the person now actually shaping and molding the priesthood in the land of Israel. They're now doing Torah. Another person you should know, I left Gavrit Yasuda in Israel. Her daughter Nizria, known as, again, Savlonut, she does Torah classes every week in there. We did Torah classes while I was there during this last visit. And the last 2 or 3 times. So we're getting on the same page in every area. And they're leaving the New Testament, going back to the Hebraic rights and to the Torah. So, and that's through that engagement.
So the criticism is really means nothing to you?
First of all, if you ever understand life, people always criticize. Especially when you're trying to do something good and right. So if you can't stand criticism, don't even get into so no, that's it. What you have to do is know that time tells a story. See, so I'm a person, my father told me that, and those are the people who molded me. No, time will always, the truth, no matter how it's oppressed, no matter what a person thinks, sooner or later, the truth is going to come out. And so I know.
What type of person was BINAH? For those of us that we heard about the man, but to you personally, because he was a friend, just maybe in a story that you could tell to explain what type of person.
Okay, well, I will tell you this here. This is how I'll explain it. I listened to my beloved brother, I love him very much, Moreh Mishael's interview with you. And I'm reiterating what Moreh Mishael said, because he's one of the kindest, most generous, honest people that I've ever met among all many leaders. Like all leaders, they have faults. I have mine. Cohen had his. BINAH had his. If you judge by faults, none of us will ever be anything.
Absolutely.
The Creator is merciful to us all. We all have portions to play. Malcolm, Elijah Muhammad, every man, Moses, they all had their faults, but they were great servants of the Maker of heaven and earth. So when you understand that and you realize that, when you hear me say that I've been to South Africa, it's BINAH that sent me there. He paid for the ticket. When you hear me say that I've been to Turkey and Egypt, he made sure that I go there because he knew that if I take you and have you go to these places, you're going to be able to serve Yah in a way and articulate. You're already a dynamic teacher, but you're going to be able to do great works. And so he sent me to international conferences in South Africa because he knew that I could deal with Jews. He sent me to Barbados to deal in international conferences because he knew that I could be able to deal with Christianity. If homosexuality came up, that I would be able to use Torah. So I mean, I'm telling you, he's a great servant of Yah. And again, like myself, most men that do extraordinary and great jobs that go beyond ordinary people, sacrifices of their family and time with their family. I have made great sacrifices of serving Yah and not having the time. We cry privately and inwardly of the pain that goes with this separation for a greater cause. But again, when you know these men on the level that I happen to know them, Cohen and BINAH and his teachers and so many others, again, there's an understanding of what we have, that you realize that most people don't understand. We're misunderstood. So you can't allow that to deter you. We operate on a different spirit. There's a different spirit of Yah that I operate on. That doesn't affect me. Never has what people said bothers me. They always talk about you. So that goes with just being, everybody gets talked about. In fact, you're just being alive, because just like somebody's talking about me, somebody's talking about them. Yes. So no, that's how it goes. You don't let that bother.
Because you're speaking about unification and the coming together of Israel. This past summer, Rabbi Capers Fune was made the chief rabbi of that segment of the community. Have you ever met Rabbi Capers Fune? Have you ever had any contact with him? What's your relationship with him?
I've known him over 30 years.
Wow. Okay.
I've worshiped with him many, many times in Chicago.
He has an open door policy too.
Oh, we love each other. You know what I'm saying? Because we've known each other a long time. He also knows that I'll never be Jewish. So again, that's not an issue. He knows me well enough to know that.
But you guys have dialogue.
Oh, yes. He's been reaching out for me since last year. When all of that took place. I'll probably be meeting and speaking with him sometime in the near future. Look forward to it. And he's playing a role. I won't speak about it, but he has a role that he's playing. Just like there's, I always tell you, that you need somebody when you're at war. You need someone to engage the enemy at every point of attack. And so again, you got to respect where they're at. But you know, there's a higher mindset that way I won't speak at. But no, I know all of these people. One time I was in Israel, and one of the princes said, because I met with all the leadership before leaving, and they said, Cohen Mikhail, wherever we go, everybody knows you, and it seems like you know everybody. But that's how I try. I want to know everybody. I love everybody. They're all of our people, and that's the way it has to be. I hope to bring everybody to the table. That's what I've done in the past. I've had many of times where I brought all of the New York brothers and sisters to the table. What I'm doing is not new. Everybody who knows me and listening know I've been doing this from. That's who I am. That's who I am. I'm Levi. That's who I am.
That hook.
That's who I am.
You're an author. You authored 2 books, I believe. 3
books, and I probably have 3 that's going to be published probably in the next few months. I edited 2 books while in Israel.
Okay.
And I've had those books sitting for 2 years, and it just flowed out, and I completely edited them while I was in Israel over the last month.
All right. Can you mention the 3 books that you have available, so that that the people will be able to see, and we could get that word out there to the new audience that might not know you?
Okay.
You know, it's a lot of people.
Well, I have a website known, I've just opened up a Facebook page known as Levitical Communications. Okay. I also have a company registered as Levitical Communications, probably over 25 years. And it's dedicated to the spread of the Hebrew culture globally. I also have now a YouTube site under my name with many, again, messages. I've done a lot of interviews like this is what I'm doing now on a regular basis. When I get to Ghana, I'll continue to do it. My first book came out of an autobiography. It's called From Harlem to the Holy Land. I never published it. It was given years ago to a brother named Nasik Emmanuel. That was what Ben Ami asked me when we met. You asked me how did we meet. He came to my home in Queens when I was here, intermittently going back and forth. And he heard about the fact that I had gone to Ghana, and I think at that time I was there 30 years, and that most of the people, practically everyone, had returned to America, that I stayed with my family, and that impressed him tremendously. He just wanted to meet this person. He told me that through a brother named Shalumiel, that everywhere he went, people would ask him, have you ever met Cohen Mikhail? And he told them. So when we met at the Schomburg Library, that was the time of the the Operation Moses and Solomon, where the Philosopher were flown into Israel. That's when I met first member of the community sojourning here in the United States.
Right.
And so Ben Ami asked me, how can I help? I told him I was trying to get this book published, but nobody would touch it. And he said, send it to D.C., which I did to the brother Nasik Emmanuel. About a week or two later, he called me and he said, your writing is gold. All we have to do is polish it up. He said, you have 3 books in one.
Oh, wow.
So the autobiography has never been published because I felt that this is now probably over 20 years later. So much I've done since then and I knew that I didn't even want to publish it then, but it was the only way that I could tell the story of my experience. And out of it, I published a book called Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference. And then I published another book called Final Resolution, The Separation of Truth and Lies in the Bible. My experience was that everywhere I went and said I was a Hebrew Israelite, they say, are you Jewish? And I had a lot of experiences with Jews here in America, so I shared that, and that became one book. And then the other book, I used Hebrew Israelites and Jews to document through the Tanakh and through history to show that connection, to prove that we were the Hebrew Israelites. The other area that I knew I had to deal with, I prayed to the Creator for guidance in all of my writings. He guided my hand and my pen. And I knew that I had to prove that Christianity was not a true doctrine. It was not true. Because in my experience, everyone thinks that they have the truth. The Jehovah's Witnesses, whoever you speak to, they believe they have the truth. And I wanted to be able to show beyond a shadow of a doubt, when you dealt with the Bible, that in that Bible everything was not true, that there were truths and lies in the Bible. So I called it Final Resolution, meaning that in the final determination of all this discussion among mankind, that the truth of the fact that the Creator, Yahweh, whose name is not mentioned in the translation of Lord, and God Elohim is not mentioned, that people will know and have a clear understanding of separating in that book they call the Bible the truth from the lies. And that the Old Testament, known as the original Testament or the Holy Scriptures, would be the place where the establishment of the litmus test for truth would be found, and that there are things in the New Testament that came out of the Old that we agree, accept, and we know that the Creator or Spirit in the original writings became a man born of a woman, which is an abomination based on the original writings. And I just went from point to point, and there are also places where there is inaccuracies, mistranslations, misspellings. I compared them by putting the scriptures side by side so that a person could actually see it. Many people have the Bible. Some claim they've read it, but they've never read it from cover to cover, the way you sit in sequence, in chronological sequence, so they don't get the understanding. And with the millions that have read the Bible, there are very few that have understood it. So I again tried to, with the guidance of Yahweh, bring that to all humanity. My writings are not for Israelites alone. It's for the human race. Truth is not for any one people. It's for the human race. I take opportunities like this to apologize to the nations for what we have done. We're responsible in a great sense for the state of the world. So I apologize on my behalf of our people, for not being that light. If we had taken this truth to the people of the earth, we wouldn't have all these religion and this confusion of what has been called Babel or Babylon.
For the people, information, and maybe an Israelite wants to travel to Guyana, where is your school located in Guyana? The address.
Okay, well, we don't have a school, we have a community. Ironically, it's located on a street called 3619 Christianity Street It will probably be renamed one day. Cohen used to have a tough magazine, and they used to call it Cohen's Corner. We're on the corner. Even though it's named that, they'll probably call it, if you have to, they'll call it Cohen's Corner. Because, again,
irony, right?
we have the largest Hebrew building ever constructed in South America on that corner.
So you have a community.
We are communities. Yes, because we're in Georgetown, Linden, Berbice, West Bank, Interior. We're all over the country. I told you, I'm waking up a country.
Wow, that's great. And I don't want to drag it out any longer. I'm sure that I'll have another opportunity to sit down with you. But in concluding, what's your message to the people? And what's your message to the people, to the community? What's your message to the community here in your city and abroad? You know,
my message is a reiteration of the message of the Holy One of Israel. He says, "Gather yourself together, O shameless nation, before the decree come forth," and that we seek Yahweh in humility, seek togetherness. He says, "It may be that you shall be hid in the day of Yah's anger and indignation." It's Zephaniah, the 2nd chapter, those first 3 verses. We need to humble ourselves with each other. We need to love one another, as the Creator said. We need to, again, express that love as a verb of action, because love is a verb called a hav. And so it's not a noun. It's an action that we need to live it. And we need to become an obedient people. We need to know that righteousness exalts a nation. And we have to live right in everything that we do, whether we're seen or unseen. We need to understand family and realize that if we apply these principles, we wouldn't have broken families. When our families do break up, and sometimes relationships are not reconcilable, but it didn't matter that when Abraham had to send Hagar and Ishmael away, Ishmael was still his son. So that when you have a divorce, as they might call it, a get in Hebrew, or a release in some communities, a separation, that the children are still the children of both parents, the nephews are still the nephews and nieces of both parents, that the grandchildren are still the grandchildren of both parents, so that we should start a marriage which is, using the word divine, pleasing in the sight of Yah, and when it doesn't work out, we should still have a divine relationship of not leaving and turning one parent against the other and teaching the children that. And again, separating ourselves, because part of what the Torah teaches is how to get along even with our misunderstandings. So if we apply that, we'll be a blessed nation. We were destroyed because we didn't apply the law, and we must apply these principles. They are our wisdom, our knowledge, and our understanding in the sight of the nations, who will say, "Who can be and who is like unto this great and people that have Yah so nigh unto them?" And so we have to show them we have a responsibility to be that nation on earth that lives. We influence people more than any other nation. And when we drop our pants down, everybody drop their pants down.
That's right.
When we do a dance, everybody do the dance. So if we can influence them with our hats backwards, why not be a righteous influence to the people? And we have to start by loving ourselves first and practicing this harmony of brotherhood and sisterhood, and then we can be able to be and establish a universal brotherhood, which is what the planet needs at this time. That would be my message to our people and to everyone.
All right, something came to my mind before we conclude. Chief Meku Body of Cohen Levy, he has this profound memory from when he was young. He said, Cohen Mikhail used to do this rap song when we were little. Now, I didn't know Cohen Mikhail was a rapper. And he goes into your voice and into your reflection. Do you remember the rap song?
Yeah, I remember the rap, but I wrote it for somebody else to do it. I'm not the singer.
You're not going to do the rap song.
I'll just tell you this. It was really written to send a message to people.
Right,
and that was what it was. And it went something like this. A lot of people rapping aren't telling you nothing. Here's a rap that's gonna teach you something. Jacob and Esau were brothers just two. You can read it in the Bible. What I say is true. Then it goes on and on and on. And that's what it was about.
I mean, this is something he always, when we're having a conversation about you, said, man, Cohen Mikhail used to sing that rap song. And so it just used to, it brings, it's that memory of your youth. And he always speaks highly of you, and he has a lot of love and respect for you, and he loves you,
I love him too, and it's very touching what you just said,
right,
because it just shows you how we as adults can impact upon a child.
Right.
And if he remembers that, and I never knew he did,
right,
so that's why I said it's touching to know that he remembered that song and how I would do it. But it was really not to do anything but to send a message and letting people know that this story of Jacob and Esau, of Israelites and Jews,
right,
it's right in that Bible.
Right.
And it says again, you're not a Rasta, you're not a Jew, you're not a Negro, and you're not a Jew.
Right.
You understand?
Okay.
You can read it in the Bible. What I say is true. You're not a Rasta and you're not an Igbo. It just goes to all these different nations, right, to point us back, and you're an Israelite.
You're an Israelite.
You're an Hebrew Israelite, yeah.
And when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered? When it's all said and done, when, we all have to take that walk, we all have to make that final journey. How do you want to be remembered?
A humble, devoted family man and loyal servant of the Holy One of Israel.
Hallelujah. Torah Cohen.
Torah Cohen. Love you.
Love you too.
Love and appreciate it.
Shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters. I hope that you have enjoyed the 4-part interviews that I did with Cohen Mikhail and Levi, an elder that's been around for almost 50 years doing this way of life. We know that our elders are precious, and the things that they do, or the way that they paved the way and the road for us, is very important. He gave us a lot of history in this interview. He brought us in on some things that we might have not known, and in some parts have even made us laugh. And it's a beautiful thing. But sometimes as Israel, one of the main things that we have to do is begin to show support. And show support in the way that other communities do. Now, he mentioned 2 books that he had. I want everyone out there that watched this interview, that these 4 parts of the interview, that if you find it in your heart to support the elder, support his books, and support the things that he has put out there. So the first book is this book, Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference, by Cohen Mikhail ben Levi. And you got the ISBN number in the back right here for everybody to see. Right? ISBN number is right there. The book costs $15. And also, they have a Facebook page called Levitical Communications. You could go to that and you could order the book from there. But I also have some books available. So the first book is Israelites and Jews, The Significance Different, by Cohen Mikhail ben Levi. The next book is Final Resolution, The Separation of the Truth and Lies in the Bible. There you have it. Separation of the truth and the lies in the Bible. And the ISBN number is right back here. You can see it clearly. That's for everyone out there that wants to see the ISBN number. But you could also order this from Levitical Communications, which is a Facebook page that Cohen has. Let's support our people. Even if you have the book, if you know somebody, a new brother or sister that's just come in, these are must-haves. You must have these books in your bookshelf. This man has put in the time, the effort, has done things that many leaders in the community have not done. This man has traveled the world to carry the message of Israel and to glorify the name of the creator of heaven and earth. He also has some DVDs here. The first one, Cohen Divine Relationships. That's also available. I also have copies of this. And the next one is just simply entitled Cohen Relationships. So one is Divine Relationships and one is Relationships. All right. So I want everyone to purchase these DVDs, to purchase these books in support of our elder and all the work and effort that he puts in. We had over 1,000 views on all the videos, so that means there's a lot of you out there that might not have the books, that are new, that might not have the DVDs. And even if you have them, like I said, it's great to give as a present to newcomers. So as you can see, the books are $15 each. I have copies of the book. You can reach me at 347-622-9090, 347-622-9090. Let's all support the Cohen and make sure that we continue to support Israel and all of our endeavors. Thank you, and may the Most High God bless you all. Shalom, shalom.